Hi, my name is Len Heisler. In June of 2007, I lost my wife of 25 years, the mother of my daughter. I was burning inside. My nerves were on fire. I was actually singing in the streets for 2 to 3 hours a day, sometimes singing until I would come back to the house late at night just to be able to go to sleep. I was feeling tidal waves of emotions, strong waves coming fast and furious, probably about loneliness and dread and fear. I wasn't going to kill myself. I have a daughter, as I said. I wasn't going to leave her with that. And I needed to find ways to live, coping skills. What I realized is that if I had videos of men who had gone through this, who know what I'm feeling, know what I'm going through, and then offered their coping skills after they decided they weren't going to take themselves out, this would have been tremendous value to me. So I'm putting this series of webisodes together for that service, as it would be for women watching women who've lost their husbands and how they've survived and offering their coping skill advice, as it would be for daughters and sons who've lost parents. That's me, Len Heisler. I'm a widower. This is where I came to start leaving my grief behind, finding my own way through that painful time in my life. I've created a series of videos called Leaving Grief Behind, so you won't have to search for answers like I did. You'll see real-life stories and learn about the incredibly different and effective ways people cope with grief.
I said to my son, I've always wanted to color my hair. What do you think? And he says, go for it, Mom.
It gets easier every day. You're never going to get over the loss, but it does get easier every day.
I found myself attracted to friends and people who had been through something because of a maturity level.
It would have been useful, it would have been valuable, I think, to continue talking about the issues with them. That would have kept us closer together.
And that is a huge thing. I mean, you have to reorganize, your identities to one another and, your identity to yourself, and you can't do it alone. So I would encourage, dialogue within families.
And my mom and I, on the 4th anniversary of his death, we kind of played the game of like, would he have a girlfriend right now? Would he be married? Would he have kids? She said she makes up scenarios in her mind of
because you want to be able to help parents know how to explain and discuss and support their child's needs and their child's emotional struggles with a loss in the family, but we also want to pay attention to the fact that the child himself or herself plays an important role, because that child is also there as part of the equation to help support and respond to their grieving parent.
I didn't know anything about until the last year of his life, just before he died, and Mom told me afterwards that they actually liked each other very much. I had never known that. I thought they were very jealous of each other when I was around, and I thought they hated each other. So I was astounded to discover they actually liked each other and got together.
Times I looked forward to being alone, not lonely, but being alone and doing things on my own and doing things my way. And there's a lot of peculiarities that you put up with somebody else. So, not only remember the good things, but remember the bad things you don't have to do anymore.
I would, as a strategy, say that however it hits you is okay, unless you're personally suffering a lot or unless you're doing things that are self-destructive. Like if people are telling you that you're not eating and you're gonna starve to death, you should listen to them. Or if they're telling you that you're not making any sense, you should listen to them. But if they tell you that you're in denial and you're acting too cheerful, this is my process. Everyone's process is different. Right. Or if they tell you you're too miserable and you're crying too much and it's time to get over it, the same thing. I mean, I think emotionally you should allow yourself to have full leeway for however you're feeling and accept yourself, and you're right to feel however it is that you're feeling.
It's funny. He was really sarcastic, which is probably where I get my sarcasm from. And I know that I picked up a lot of his mannerisms without even realizing it. But.
At least in my case, and I think, I've certainly spoken to other people who have been through similar things, your heart doesn't really break. It's wounded, but it gets bigger. It's like the pain doesn't push the joy out. Your heart gets bigger to make room for the pain.
I found, we try to deal with it head on. We don't try to not talk about it or dwell on it. We just try to think positive and think of the good times that we've had with her, and just continuously talk about her and the things that she used to do and stuff like that. So that's how we kind of get through it.
My first guest is Art Cabrera, who was with his son on the day he was born and at his bedside on the day he died. Joaquin was only 17 years old when he lost his battle to leukemia. Soon thereafter, Art underwent gallbladder surgery and was in bed for more than a month, with no mobility, having confrontations with bewilderment, fear, dread, and crashed sleep cycles, while trying to help his daughter Sylvia deal with the loss of her brother. How does anyone rise above this extraordinary challenge? Here is Art in his own words, describing his way out of darkness, into life, into light, and leaving his grief behind.
Towards the end of his life, he didn't really talk that much. We didn't talk a lot. We just were together. So he turns to her and he says, so, Grandma, that they have angels as big as me. And then the last things he actually said, the last coherent words he said is, Daddy, my feet are getting cold. So I knew that, he was dying and he would be dead soon. I guess it's important to be, it's important to be busy. I'm involved with a number of different men's groups and community groups. I'm on the board of directors of Camp Friendship. I'm in a men's fraternal organization called the Brooklyn Bucket Brigade that operates out of Camp Friendship. I'm in a men's group that does artwork. It's called Art by Construction Workers. We have an annual show. So, I'm self-employed. I'm a self-employed electrician. I've had my own business. I've been self-employed for 28 years. I work on my house. I spend a lot of time with my girlfriend. I try to see my daughter every week. I talk to my daughter almost every day or every couple of days. Life to me, is like a wave, and I'm like constantly like riding the wave, and I try to keep on the top of the wave, but I know that eventually I'm going to have dips, and I'm not going to feel good, but I don't want to stay there. That's the difference between now and years ago. I was kind of stuck in a morose state. Right. Now it's like when I get into those states, I do not allow myself to stay there. I've learned a whole bunch of different techniques to get out of, I'll like stay with a feeling, but I'm not going to let it like run my life. Right. I'll acknowledge it, I'll stay with it, and then after a while I say, okay, I'm got to get out of this. So I'll do whatever it takes to get out of it, whether it's listen to music, go for a walk, go for a bike ride, call somebody, talk to somebody, right. Break that isolation, call someone. Read something, go visit somebody, mentally just get myself out of this state of feeling morose or feeling bad about myself, which I don't do anymore, or feeling bad about the world, or feeling whatever. But I don't allow myself to stay in those states anymore because I've built up a bag of tools to get out of it. Right. And I know to stay in those states is like really deadly for me.
A father jumps into a cold lake to save his 9-year-old daughter from drowning. The cold water and adrenaline overcome the man's heart, and he dies in front of his daughter and her classmates on a school trip. Everything happens so fast. When Mom hears the news, she yells out a scream that her special needs son never forgets. How does a mother who shockingly and suddenly loses her husband deal with her own trauma and post-trauma while trying to help her son and daughter cope with this terrible situation. She asks, how does life go on? How does the family go on? Here are Barbara and Maria's remarkable story of a brave young girl, her brother, and a mother's gutsy choices to remake a reconfigured family and leave their grief behind.
Of a swimming accident with me, I was having trouble swimming in the water, and he jumped in to help me out and sort of like push me up. And as he was getting out of the water, he experienced a heart attack, and so it was very sudden, pretty traumatic as well. And so yeah, we had no idea that it was going to happen. It was just, you know,
together.
Like that.
And I thought Maria was dead. That was the first thing that jumped through my mind. And then when I said, has something happened to Maria? They said, no, something's happened to Keith. Keith's dead. So that's the way I learned, and it was completely out of the blue. And I just remember screaming. I mean, I screamed, and Max, Maria's brother, can still remember me screaming. It was easy, but I was really worried about her because she had been, you know, some people would say she was involved in the cause of his death. So I was so worried about her mental health and her going forward that consumed me. And the thought that went through my head is, how could the sun rise if he's dead? I mean, I literally was questioning that. How is life going on? And that sort of was the beginning of the path for me. You have to reconfigure. I mean, that was for me. I felt like we had to reconfigure as a new group. But my story is, I spent every penny that I had to make them whole. And I don't know, and I didn't do it by buying them things. I did it by getting them in the places that would give them support and help them learn the skills.
But talking about it with someone, especially someone who wasn't involved, is really easier to take. You know, they have an unbiased opinion, so it was easier to hear him say, you know, there's no connection with, you know, what happened with you, and, you know, that your father died, it's not your fault. And it was easier to believe him, you know, because I think that, especially as a kid, your parents always want to make you feel better, and they're always trying to protect you, and that certainly was the case. I mean, we've heard her say even tonight that she was worried about me, and that she was trying to do that. And even as a 9-year-old, I recognized that, you know. So it was easier to believe him, I think, in some sense, than it was, and when he was telling me it wasn't my fault and it was okay, than my mom.
Going with your gut and believing what you know to be true is such an important part of this process.
An important message would just be to that it really does get easier with time.
I guess the other thing is, the thing that like really was in my mind is, I'll never see him again, I'll never touch him again, I'll never smell him again. But at some point, the memories become enough.
Please let us know if we've been successful in helping with your grief. We'd also like to hear your own personal stories that might be helpful to others in their time of need. Visit our website at leavinggriefbehind.wordpress.com to learn how you can obtain a copy of the manuscript I wrote about coping with my own grief, Leaving Grief Behind: A Widower's Story. Also learn how you can participate in our Leaving Grief Behind social club and events. Visit us. Post a blog at leavinggriefbehind.wordpress.com.